Hi, I'm Mike, and I'm addicted to motorcycles. And today we're going to be talking about the age-old debate, street glide versus road glide. And today we're going to talk about which one is right for you. Now, before someone asks, why are you making this video? This video's been made 100 times. Well, because people keep asking me why I picked the street glide over the road glide when I bought a new 24 model a few months ago, in October to be exact. If you're new here, thanks for checking out the video. If you've been here before, thanks for being a repeat offender. I really appreciate your support on the channel. If you guys like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Maybe even subscribing to the channel if you want to see more content like this. In the Harley touring lineup, we basically have two types of touring models with the exception of the Road King Special, which does not have a fairing. Those two types are the street glide with the batwing style fairing and the road glide with a fixed, what was referred to as shark nose fairing. Now in 2024, Harley Davidson released new versions of these motorcycles with newly designed fairings. Because of that change, a lot of people are no longer sure which one they like. The fact is there's something called an adoption rate. And when something new comes out, there is this rate of time it takes for people to get accustomed to the new look, the new styling. Some people who are very adamant that they liked the shark nose better do not like the new shark nose. And they're more on the fence on maybe they like the new street glide fairing better. People who are very traditional and accustomed to the old style street glide fairing don't like the new modern take on it. And therefore, they're maybe considering a road glide that they wouldn't before because they don't have anything that they like from that traditional styling now available. It opens up your eyes to new opportunities. Now, I'm not saying this is for everyone, but this is for some people. And I believe this is why I'm getting so many questions on why I chose the street glide over the road glide. Now, a year ago, I got invited to the Harley Davidson press event in Las Vegas when these new models were released in 2024. And I got to ride the street glide and the road glide for several hours during that event. I got a taste and a feel for both of them. To give you a little history, I'm traditionally a street glide guy. I've been riding that black 2016 until I bought this new 2024 in October. And before the 2016, I rode a 1990 Ultra Classic. That was my first touring bike, and I rode that for several years as well. Now, when I got into touring bikes, it was beggars can't be choosers. And what I mean by that is I was going through a divorce, and I couldn't buy a motorcycle. And my dad, who's an avid motorcycle lover as well, offered to buy something cheap if he could find it that I could ride for a few years till I got through my divorce, and then I could either buy it or we could sell it and I could buy what I want. And that's what we did. He bought a motorcycle and let me ride it for a few years. And the 1990 Ultra Classic was that bike. And it wasn't picked based on I wanted a street glide and not a road glide style fairing. You know, I know that's an electric glide before somebody corrects me, but it wasn't based on the style of the bike. It was based on this is what we could afford and what we could find a good deal on. Now, one thing I have learned from riding 30 different motorcycles in the last 5 years is that a lot of times when you do a demo ride, especially a 10-15 minute demo ride, something feels different or awkward about a bike and you decide, I don't like that. When in reality, if you spent several hours or days on it, you might change your mind. Prime example, my wife test rode the Lowrider S and the Street Bob and several other bikes before she settled on the Sport Glide. She started out on this Dyna with forward controls, and the one reason she liked the Sport Glide was because of the forward controls. Everything else felt awkward, different. She didn't like it when it came to the mid controls. The reality is, she got to ride a Lowrider ST in Daytona last year for a couple of days, and after a couple of days of riding it, she became accustomed to it, and she actually did not mind the mid controls and actually felt a little more confident on them in slow speed turns like in parking lots and stuff. So my point is, if you are on the fence about a street glide or a road glide or any other model, simply riding it for 10 minutes may not be enough time to decide if you really are okay with these things or really not okay with certain things. And I would recommend, if you can afford it, to try and rent a model from Eagle Rider or Rider Share or somewhere like that and ride it for a full day and see how you really feel about it. That is by far going to give you the best real world experience and help you determine if you are okay or not okay with some of the differences between a couple of different bikes. Now, there are going to be some things that are going to be pretty obvious that you may not like on a particular motorcycle right away. For example, riding the street bob for an hour, I can tell you it's not going to get any better riding it all day because it cramps my hips. I'm too old, I'm not the right height, the right build, the right age and flexibility for that motorcycle as a full day riding bike. I have to stretch my legs. Could I do it? Yes. Would it be comfortable? No. The longer I ride it, it's not going to make it better, it's going to make it worse. So there are simple things like that that you can determine right away. You're probably wondering why I'm talking about all that stuff when we're simply talking about the Street Glide and the Road Glide. Well, those two bikes are essentially identical with the exception of the fairing and the windshield. And those differences are those kinds of things that feel awkward or weird. And what I mean by that is I was used to the batwing style fairing, which is attached to the forks on the motorcycle. When you turn the handlebars, the fairing turns with it. The headlight points in the direction you turn the handlebars. The Road Glide fairing is a fixed fairing. It's mounted to the frame. It does not turn when you turn the bars. I find that awkward or uncomfortable when I turn the handlebars and the front end doesn't turn. That's one of those things that I had to ride a bike for more than a few minutes to really feel like if it was a big deal or not. And as I mentioned, I got to ride them, for several hours at the press event. But even better than that is Renegade Harley Davidson offered to loan me a new touring model last year to ride for a whole weekend, a 3-day weekend to take to an event. I rode it to Spring Fling. I chose a Road Glide because I was familiar with the Street Glide and I wanted to see if after several days on a Road Glide, how I really felt about it. Give it a real opportunity. And so I rode that bike to Spring Fling, rode it up and down the pig trail, tested it on the curvy Ozark Hills roads. And the fact is, the fairing not turning is something I really only experience at slow speeds when you're turning the handlebars rather than leaning the bike. Once I'm on the bike, the fairing not turning wasn't really the issue. What I did discover was I didn't like certain things about the Road Glide fairing as well as the Street Glide fairing. And that's what we're going to talk about is the differences in those fairings and those windshields. And maybe that will help you decide which one you are more interested in or you should do a demo ride on to see if you really like it or not. Now, when we picked up that Road Glide, my wife and I were both riding with full face helmets and cardos on so we could talk. And the minute I got on that Road Glide and headed down the road, she commented that she was getting a lot more wind noise through my microphone. I feel that's because the windshield and the fairing are further away from you, so I get more wind over that and back into my body and back into my helmet. And this isn't just a feeling. I mean, she could hear it coming up through the helmet. She could hear it coming through the microphone much more. I feel it, and I have some evidence from someone else that says the same thing. So the Road Glide fairing being further away, I got more wind noise. I also don't feel it would protect me from the rain as well as the Street Glide fairing that's much closer that you can kind of hunker down behind. And those are my opinions. Someone else may feel different. Obviously, how tall your windshield is and some of those things can affect those things as well. But with all things being the same, like a 6-inch windshield on both, I feel you'll get more wind noise and more maybe buffeting on the Road Glide and less protection from the rain. I want to give a big shout out to today's video sponsor. That is Schmidt Law Firm. I thank them for sponsoring today's video. Ben Schmidt is an attorney that also rides and races motorcycles. He's not just a personal injury attorney, and that's who I would call if I got in an accident, and that's who I recommend you call if you're in Missouri, Kansas, or Arkansas, and you need a personal injury attorney. And I want to thank them again for sponsoring motorcycle events in Missouri and for sponsoring today's video. Also, if you're not long in the arms, you cannot reach up and touch that 12-inch TFT display near as easily. You have to lean forward. Now on the Street Glide, I can easily reach up and touch that screen. I'm used to that. I like that. Before the touch screen on the older bikes, we didn't do everything with the controls like my 1990. You had to reach up and turn the volume up. Things like that, or change a station, or plug in a cassette. Yes, it had a cassette player. So there are some differences there. I feel more comfortable with the Street Glide because of the be able to reach the screen and the protection I get from it as well. That was one of the things that was a plus for it after riding both. Now, to be fair and give the fixed fairing its props, I do feel like on the interstate, when you're in heavy traffic with semis and big trucks and things like that, I get less buffeting in the handlebars from the fixed fairing. With the Street Glide, I get more of this vibration, which if you ride the interstate all day, you do cross-country tours or things like that, and you're on the interstate a lot, could be an advantage to have the Road Glide. Less fatigue on your arms and shoulders from having to deal with the handlebars vibrating more in that wind buffeting on the front fairing. A lot of people feel that the front fairing is more stable on that. I also know the King of the Baggers runs Road Glides on the track. They prefer those. I'm sure that is part of it. They get up to speeds of 170 miles an hour. The new CVO Road Glide ST is just that, a Road Glide. They did not make a CVO Street Glide ST. And I wonder if it's because all of the technology that went into that bike came from the track where they really use Road Glides and not Street Glides. So they couldn't make a Street Glide ST at the same performance level that they made the Road Glide ST because they don't have the same data from the racetrack to help design and build that bike out. Now, to be fair, the Road Glide is 27 pounds heavier. And since these bikes are essentially the same except for the front end, that means that weight is in the front end. That may help with the stability on the highway. You know, everybody wants bikes to be lighter and lighter, but heavier bikes don't get moved around in the wind on the interstate from traffic and other vehicles as much as lighter bikes. That's a fact. I've rode for 25 years. Nobody will change my mind on that. So the lighter the bike gets, the more susceptible it is to being pushed around in those turbulent winds. And I think the weight on the front end of the Road Glide helps make that front end more stable. As a counter to that though, that means some people feel the front end is heavier and that bike is less nimble to drop into turns or on really curvy roads or turning in slow speeds and doing those kinds of maneuvers. Now, that doesn't mean you can't adapt to that or build your skills and get past that, but that is why I think some people feel that the Street Glide is more agile or nimble, especially at slow speeds. Now, another advantage to the Road Glide from the factory though, is the new handlebar design they came out with on these 24 and newer generations. Technically, it came out 23.5 on the CVOs, but most of us can't afford CVOs, so I tend to not mention that. But this new design for the handlebars allows 27 degrees of adjustability in the handlebars on the Road Glide, and they feel like they're a little taller than the old version, you know, the old generation was. So I think the handlebar ergonomics are much better from the factory. But again, I mean, it's a $500 to $800 job, depending on if you can do it yourself or not, to upgrade your handlebars and go to taller bars. You can go to 12 inches pretty easily on a Street Glide without as much expense, not having to buy as many cables like brake and clutch lines. But if you want to go higher than that, it's probably going to be closer to 1,000. But those things can be done. So if it's worth it to you to have the Street Glide fairing, that's just another expense you may have to consider as part of that purchase. Now, the Road Glide is slightly more expensive than the Street Glide from the factory now. And I think that has to do with the popularity. I hear that some people claim the Road Glide outsells the Street Glide 2 to 1. My dealership said it wasn't quite that much, more like 60-40 split on their sales. But the sea of black Street Glides in the parking lot is quickly turning to Road Glides. And with black no longer being the base color, we're seeing a lot less of those coming out of the dealership. We're seeing more gray or the other more vibrant colors like the Onyx White Pearl here I have, or the Blue Burst, the new Fire Red, Whiskey Fire. Those have been very popular colors the last few years. I think we're getting away from that trend of black bikes only. Now, have I convinced you one fairing is better than the other yet? Well, I hope not. I hope, if anything, I've convinced you one fairing is better than the other for you. Everybody's feelings and height and weight and what they like is going to be different. You know, Willie G once said that form reports to function, but both report to emotion. And the fact is, purchasing something like a Harley Davidson is often driven by emotion. And when you get off that bike and you don't look back at that bike and really just want to take it all in because it speaks to you, then you probably didn't buy the right bike. And that goes back to emotion. So we can talk about form and function all day, but nobody wants to ride a bike that they don't like or don't like the look of. So that's going to be an important factor, is the aesthetics of these fairings as well. All right, guys, now that we've talked about this, leave me a comment down below. Let me know whether you think you would like the Street Glide better or the Road Glide better, and why. All right, guys, if you liked today's video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. I really appreciate everybody watching this video. Y'all stay safe, keep on riding, and we'll see you in the next one.